Roll Tide, everybody. A little late, but great to be on here today to talk about Alabama football. The tardiness was on me, but you guys are here, and that's what I appreciate. Cover Crimson, covercrimson.com, brought to you by Pearl River Resort. Let's get this thing going. Better late than never, what I always say. Let's go. All right, there he is, Clint Lamb. I'm Mick Gillispie. Great to see you guys on a Monday talking Alabama. It's that time of year where you're really digging deep to find stuff to talk about, but there really is a lot, I think, out there that kind of gives you an idea of what you're looking at to start this season. And I can't wait for football to start. We're closing in on the 100-day mark, so Kalen DeBoer getting out there, and that's – Ty Simpson's the starting quarterback, and we know that now.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's official, but he does confirm that as of right now, he would be the starter. And essentially that tells you it's going to take something fairly drastic in fall camp for that to change. Now, that could be Ty Simpson kind of faltering a little bit, maybe making some mistakes he wasn't making in the spring. Maybe it's one of the other guys, Keelon Russell, Austin Mack, stepping up, making a bunch of plays that, kind of forcing their way onto the field. But everybody's been saying it. The offensive coordinator, the head coach, anybody that you talk to behind the scenes, everybody seems to be pointing towards Ty Simpson being Alabama's starting quarterback against Florida State in week 1. What happens from there depends. It depends on Ty, it depends on how things look. Like sometimes it's not a matter of maybe the quarterback, it's not all the quarterback's fault, but sometimes just things aren't working with a certain guy in there. So you got to make a move. So I guess it was last week and we didn't get a chance to talk about it, but I wanted to talk about it because I did have a question from somebody that I met down in Florida over the weekend about the quarterbacks. Then you had this come out. Then there was also this ESPN piece talking about Keelon Russell or mentioning Keelon Russell. So we're going to get into that. But Kalen DeBoer, when he was asked about it, he made an appearance on the Paul Feinbaum show last week. He said, we've got 3 guys, and they're all really at different spots in their careers. Ty having been in the program for a couple of years, and then really Austin getting a chance to take his first meaningful reps in practice this spring, and Keelon joining as an early enrollee. If you had to play right now, you go with the veteran in Ty. He did a nice job this spring, as did the others. He did mention that the competition's not over, though. He said, we just need to keep that competition going. They know that. That's their expectation because they know that where they're at right now isn't good enough to where we need to be to have the success we want to have as a football team. So, Mick, what are your thoughts? I guess what I want to talk about here first is kind of, okay, Ty Simpson, everything's trending towards him. So for now, until that changes, we're really not going to look at the offense if it's being led by Austin Mack or Keelon Russell. We're not going to talk about expectations for the team. If we need to pivot and change, if something changes in fall camp, we can do that. But for now, with Ty Simpson as Alabama's starting quarterback, what do you think their ceiling is in 2025?
The playoffs, I think the playoffs certainly is the goal right here. And I think he can do that. He's got the experience that he's got is going to show when he gets under center and the season starts, because he's put in all the time behind the scenes, and now it's time for him to have it pay off. He kind of has that Jay Coker feel to it, like where he's been there, done that, and you just got to kind of count on him to have a little bit of a growing curve when he starts playing, but to figure it out. And I think he will. Very similar skill set to Coker too. Except he's played a lot more quarterback, because Coker was like playing tight end and stuff in high school, So, and this guy comes from a football family. So I think I'm pretty confident in him.
I'm pretty confident too. In fact, I'm very confident. We'll get into that when we project Ty Simpson's stats at the end of the episode. That was one of the questions that I was asked. I was asked in person Met Brandon. He watches the show down in Florida. That was pretty cool. But he had a question. He just wanted to know what would you project Ty Simpson's stat line to be? So we're going to get into that here in just a little bit. But for now, I want to kind of keep talking about the ceiling of this football team because Ty Simpson, when you talk about the talent that's around, that's going to be around him, whether you're talking about the weapons, whether you're talking about the offensive line, like why can't he be at bare minimum a Jake Haener caliber of quarterback, who was obviously Kalen DeBoer's quarterback at Fresno State multiple seasons? I mean, obviously, the numbers that he put up, which we'll kind of get into those here in a little bit as well. Like, I'm not saying Ty Simpson's necessarily going to be like a 4,000 plus yard passer, but I do think that, with a guy like with Jake Haener, I mean, he wasn't the biggest guy. He was like 6 foot, around 205, 210 pounds, somewhere in that range. Had the below average arm talent. I think Ty has a better arm, but he had the great football IQ. He obviously was not nearly as mobile as Ty Simpson. He is more of a pocket guy, kind of, was able to dissect things pre-snap, get the football out quickly against the blitz. But I'm saying from like a talent standpoint, like this was a 4th round pick who a lot of people actually had going a little bit later than the 4th round, maybe sometime on D3, and the Saints took him a little early. But, at the bare minimum, why can't Ty be that caliber of player? And if he can be, and I just mean from a passing standpoint, plus you'll add in the rushing element as well. But if he can be, when you talk about the weaponry that he's going to have at his disposal compared to what a guy like Jake Haener had at Fresno State. Now, granted, the competition is also a massive step up, but I think that if you can get serviceable to good play, the system and the weaponry that he's going to have around him and the expected improvement as far as the protection, I think that elevates everything with Simpson, where he goes from being a serviceable player with all that around him to being a good player to maybe even a great player. And from a numbers standpoint, you might even get into an elite category before it's all said and done.
Well, he's going to have a good offensive line around him. I mean, I think that's one of the most important things that any quarterback has. You feel like this is very talented wide receiver room. I mean, we've talked about that before, with, Starr and Ryan Williams. Jeremy Bernard could, a guy that you can count on to make catches, Isaiah Horton and him hooking up in practice, all these rookies or freshmen that you look at and you're like, man, Latsier Brooks, we keep hearing about him, Derek Meadows, the guys that were kind of behind the scenes last year, the Cole Adams type guys. I mean, Bubba Hampton. I mean, there's guys that you feel like can make plays. And so he should have some weapons. And then a great offensive coordinator in Ryan Grubb. I mean, it's like last year we kind of knew that that was going to be an issue. And I thought that Nick Sheridan did a good job of growing into the job, but he's not renowned as an offensive coordinator like Ryan Grubb. So you have all those elements. And I think it puts, Alabama in a spot where you can feel pretty comfortable about the quarterback.
I do think, and that's where I'm at. Like we've said, I think you're getting serviceable, good, maybe even great play from the quarterback position, regardless of who ends up starting. It's a matter of, okay, you might get good to great play from Keelon Russell, but he also might make some freshman mistakes that the other guys wouldn't make that could potentially get you beat. Or based off of what we were hearing about Austin Mack, where he was kind of pressing in the spring, maybe you get something similar from him. But I think as far as the good side of it, I think you're going to get effective play no matter who ends up being the starting quarterback. Way offsides, I think it's a good point to make, because when you talk about Mac Jones, his situation could be Mac Jones-esque, where he's kind of a backup and everybody kind of writes him off because, he never made a move. The difference is obviously Mac had, a clear top 5 pick ahead of him. He also had Jalen Hurts earlier in his career where he was like the number 3 for a while. So, I mean, it's a little bit of a different situation, but the fact that he sat around and he waited his turn, and then when he got his opportunity, he was surrounded by a very good situation. Like Mac Jones had one of the best play callers in college football in Steve Sarkisian. He had one of the best wide receiver rooms in college football, despite the fact that a couple of those wideouts had moved on. He still had guys, Devontae Smith ended up winning the Heisman, Jalen Waddle for a portion of the season. John Mechie ended up being an early second round draft pick. You had a really, really good to elite running back who finished, I think, in the top 5 or top 6 as far as the Heisman voting, and Najee Harris. You had a good offensive line. So it's like the surrounding circumstances for both, what we expect Ty Simpson to be in versus what Mac Jones was in a few years ago. That's similar. As far as the skill set's very different, because kind of that backyard style of football, that mobility that Ty Simpson brings to the table. Mac Jones was one of those. He was a lot more Jake Haener. Like, he wanted to win from the pocket. There wasn't a ton of mobility, but he knew where to go with the football, and he had just a plethora of weapons that he could really use to take advantage of what defenses were giving him. I mean, when you talk about ceilings and how good this team can be with Ty Simpson, I mean, I think they can win a national championship with him. I really do, because even if he doesn't end up being that elite player, I think the biggest problem with Jalen Milroe was that playmaking ability was up there with anybody else in college football. I mean, the arm strength, the mobility, the rushing factor, very exciting, was a playmaker. But the nuanced things, like, if things weren't going right for him, things weren't going right for anybody. And everybody's going to have off days. I'm sure Ty Simpson's going to have them. But when you have those days, it's like, okay, today's really not my day. I need to be able to put the ball into the hands of my playmakers, maybe do some different things with them, get them involved and allow them to make the plays. That was a little bit more difficult with a guy like Jalen Milroe, because as far as the screens, as far as, the short, quick passing game, those types of things where maybe you can get your guys involved and allow them to make the plays, that wasn't something that Jalen Milroe was overly comfortable with. So with Ty, I just think that the improvement we're expecting from the defense, the improvement that we're expecting surrounding the quarterback, and more consistent play at that position, I do think a national championship is very much in the cards.
Wow, I love to hear that. Hey, guys, thanks for hanging out with us here on Cover Crimson. We're brought to you by Pearl River Resort over in Philadelphia, Mississippi. Love it over there. Great time of year to think about golf, the Azaleas, the Oaks, 2 amazing courses right there at Dancing Rabbit. And we appreciate those guys so much for being a part of what we do here on a daily basis. I love these freshmen to watch. And I think with NIL and the transfer portal, it's easier for freshmen to get playing time because the rosters aren't as deep.
Yeah. And, with Keelon Russell, like, that's the other side of this coin that I want to talk about, because while we think Ty Simpson's going to be the starter, he's probably going to be the starter. That's for week 1. And you and I think are both in agreement where we think he's going to be good enough to be the starter for the entirety of the season. I think he's going to have a lot of success. We'll have to see what happens after the season as far as, does he move on? We'll worry about that when it gets here. But for now, I'm in the camp of, I think if, especially the further you get into the season, the more comfortable Keelon Russell gets with the offense. I've said this before. I think he's going to become more dangerous as the season progresses. So Ty's got to continue to get better and be more effective and get more comfortable. And as he's getting that playing experience, continue to build, because if he doesn't, I mean, Keelon Russell's going to close that gap. But a lot of other people are saying, okay, Ty Simpson's kind of, in their minds, more of a placeholder. Now, that could be a placeholder short term that changes in fall camp. That could be something that carries on, after the Florida State game, depending on what happens, in Tallahassee. Some people think it's midway through the season. Maybe it's a late season stretch. Maybe it's something like in the national championship where Tua replaced Jalen Hurts. But, that's the other side of this coin. So ESPN, they listed just a ton of, most exciting games, most exciting transfers, a lot of top 10 lists kind of crammed into, one article. But one of the sections, I guess, was 10 freshmen to watch. And then you had a lot of guys, DJ Pickett for LSU, Devin Sanchez, a corner for Ohio State, Julian Lewis was a quarterback for Colorado to keep an eye on, Justice Terry, a defensive tackle for Texas. He was included. DeCorian Moore, the wide receiver at Oregon. Bryce Underwood was the number 1 player on this list for Michigan. But Keelon Russell was sitting there at number 2. And, so it's like, okay, if he gets more comfortable operating the offense and playing on the level that he's now playing at, the step up in competition. You know, what would you say as far as percent chances that you think that Alabama will eventually move off of Ty Simpson to a guy like Keelon Russell?
I mean, you don't think Austin Mack would be the guy? You know, like if there were struggles, I mean, do you think it would be Russell this year?
For me personally, yeah, I do.
Wow.
And granted, Austin Mack, you know, he was, and he's still young, and we need to continue to reiterate that. At some point, things could click for him, and they could click in fall camp, and he's a completely different player. Maybe it continues to take him a little bit longer, but I've kind of said I feel like Keelon's going to end up being the quarterback too. I think you need to go ahead and get him those reps. If you've got him as quarterback 3, where he's never getting end of game mop up duty reps, you know, it at that point in his mind by the end of the season, it's not just okay, I've got to beat out Ty Simpson. If Ty Simpson elects to come back, even if Ty leaves, then it becomes, well, I mean, I was behind Austin Mack as well. So now he would probably be the assumed leader.
Right.
And so, you know, then you might have some trouble as far as maybe Keelon Russell wanting to go elsewhere. I think it would just, not only would it be beneficial for Keelon individually, but also for Alabama in the long term to go ahead and get him a lot of those reps when available. And, you know, I understand that makes a statement to Austin Mack. It doesn't mean that he'll be completely out of the competition should Ty Simpson leave after 2025. I think they would open it up and Austin would have some opportunities, but I also think it would, the priority more than likely will be to position Keelon Russell and not Austin Mack, if I had to guess.
Wow. No, if he was able to jump in and really perform at that level, I mean, as a true freshman, then that would be great. But hopefully Ty Simpson just handles his business, because all that experience, that's just when it pays off. You know, I mean, this is why and the quarterback play right now in college is a big deal. You know, these guys are getting paid a lot of money to go places because you got to have somebody that they're paying for experience. Alabama's got that right now with Ty Simpson. And so if he faltered and it was Keelon Russell, that'd be so interesting. All the talent, but no experience.
So Antoine, he brought up an interesting point. We got to see Mac Jones go through his struggle at the end of the season before he was a full-time starter. That's the only thing I'm worried about with Ty. He may have an early game where he struggles. That is a phenomenal point. Now, here's what I'll say. I've always said this about Mac Jones. I'll continue to say this about Mac Jones. He had one critical mistake against Auburn in that Iron Bowl back in 2019. And it was I think it was the first pick 6 that he threw. That's one of those where it's like, don't know what you're looking at, but it was a poor decision. We saw Tua make a similar throw against Clemson in the national title the season before in 2018. So, I mean, it's not like, you know, even a guy who's going to be a future top 5 draft pick, a guy who was in the Heisman conversation and all that. It's not like he's above making that type of mistake as well. But that's one where it's like, man, can't make that throw, Mac. The other pick 6, that was fluky. I will never hold that against Mac Jones. I mean, that play could go 100 times, and I think 99 of them, it's an incomplete pass more than likely. But you know, Mac did have some up and down play at times, but I think overall, I mean, when you look at the numbers, I actually was going back through and looking at some of these, so it's an interesting point. But in 2019, so Tua, he was averaging 315 yards per game, about 316. Had thrown for just over 2,800 yards in his time as the starter, but he had thrown, was averaging 11.3 yards per attempt, and he was averaging a 71.4% completion percentage. When you look at Mac Jones, he was up there just under 69%, so there wasn't a whole lot of drop off there. You look at the yards per attempt being at 11.3. I mean, that was one of the top 2 in the country. I mean, and that just the way that worked as far as, you know, not needing a ton of pass attempts, but also getting the production and keeping all those Alabama receivers involved and allowing them to make plays like Mac came in. It was a different style of offense, don't get me wrong. But what it did do is it was kind of operating in the same way, because Mac Jones averaged 10.7 yards per attempt, which not quite as good, but it was certainly up there. I thought he played pretty well outside of really one bad throw against Auburn. I thought he was effective. Ty, he's probably going to experience some of that at the beginning of the season. But here's the thing. So are the other guys. Like, you're not going to have, like, Austin Mack, I guarantee is going to have that problem, or it is every bit as likely to have that problem. Keelon Russell, being a true freshman, would fully expect him to have that same issue. So then it becomes, okay, who's going to limit those mistakes as you kind of build things up or get things going offensively? And then who, some people will say, okay, but who also has the most upside? Does Ty have the most upside? No. But I do think he's got plenty of upside, way more than a lot of people give him credit for. And I do think that when you start talking about letting some of those mistakes compound, I think Ty would be the one to be able to limit that enough where you can still win football games despite, like, Alabama was still in that Iron Bowl and probably should have still won despite Mac Jones' mistakes. I fully expect whoever's starting at quarterback, Alabama's got the talent and the ability around them, whether it be offensively or defensively, to keep them in football games, even if you've got a couple of those mistakes. But, you've got to be able to get over the hump. So I'll be curious to see what that looks like, Nick. I mean, this Alabama quarterback room, it's talented, it's inexperienced for sure, but it can win a national championship. There's no doubt in my mind.
Wow. Yeah, that's a great feeling right there. I mean, because there were people that didn't feel like Milroe could do that. It was always kind of I don't know. It was 50-50. He never really united the fan base, from the beginning. And hopefully that Simpson or Russell or whoever, and maybe Mac, is one of these guys like a Mac Jones or a Bryce, or Tua, where everybody's like, hey, we've got best quarterback we could possibly have, and feel good about it and support the team. Hey guys, Father's Day's coming up and we got you covered here. Room 20, that's 20% off your first order at Roback. We love the Roback shirts. Coker's always wearing his. He says they're the most comfortable shirts he's got. He sleeps in them. So take advantage of that code as we talk here. Alabama football on the Cover Crimson YouTube channel. And I'm glad to see all you guys like and subscribe too as you hang out. Maybe a couple questions, Clint, before we jump ship here.
Yeah. And well, before we do that, I do want to go ahead and answer the question of the projecting Ty Simpson stats. And I've looked into this, and I've looked into, okay, Michael Penix and kind of what the ceiling looks like, and looking at Jake Haener, looking at some previous Alabama quarterbacks, the type of system they're going to run. I did find it pretty fascinating. When you look at Kalen DeBoer, his first season as the offensive coordinator at Fresno State in 2017, they averaged 7.6 yards per attempt, and that tied for 45th nationally. From that point forward, you only saw one rank outside of the top 25, and that was 2021 Fresno State, but they only checked in at number 29. So you've had top 30 in yards per attempt quarterbacks pretty much every step of the way. You've seen, number 14, number 24, number 16, 29, 18, 13, and even Jalen Milroe this past season checked in at number 9. And it was always in that 8 to 9 yard range. So, I mean, based off of history and the fact that I think Ty Simpson is going to be able to operate very similarly to some of these other quarterbacks that Kalen DeBoer's had, I would say probably going to average somewhere in that neighborhood between, if I had to guess, between 8.5, 8.5, 8.6, probably going to average about 33 to 35 pass attempts per game. I have him coming in somewhere between 65 to 67% completion percentage, averaging between 270 and 275 yards per game, which if that's over 12 games, that's 3,500 yards. If you play 14 or 15, now you're getting up there close to 4,000. So that's going to put him in an elite category. And that's what I'm talking about as far as I believe in Ty Simpson's ability to get the job done well enough with Alabama's receivers and really just the weapons in general on the offensive side, where he's going to put up some pretty absurd numbers. I trust the offense, and I trust Ty Simpson's ability to execute that. I think he gets to 30-plus passing touchdowns. You look at the quarterbacks, and they do turn the football over. I mean, very rarely have you seen Kalen DeBoer quarterbacks not sitting up there in the 8, 9, 10, 11 interception range. So I would probably say with Ty Simpson, he might get, 8, 9, maybe even 10 if he has some early season struggles, but I think he'll get better. And then I'm predicting that he's going to be somewhere in that 250 to 300 yards rushing, nothing crazy, but also kind of shows off his mobility. And he adds another 4 or 5 touchdowns on the ground. So I think he's going to have a very, very successful season. Is going to be considered one of the better quarterbacks in the country. Some people will say it's a lot more of the system than Ty, but I think it's going to be a little bit of a mix of both. And Alabama will push for a national title.
Hey, there you go. And he'll have a great offensive coordinator. And if that happens, you know what? Maybe he gets a chance to go to the NFL draft, and you get Keelon Russell as maybe as a redshirt freshman, or as a sophomore, depending on, what that looks like during the season. But I love hearing you say that, man. It is exciting when, you feel comfortable enough to say that you think Alabama is going to push for a national championship. And, and D says this, and it's great to see all you guys, but we'll find out. I mean, Florida State, Wisconsin, Georgia, 3 of your first 4 games, there's no, cupcake to kind of get your feet wet. I mean, they're going right into Tallahassee, and that's going to be a tough game right out of the chute. I mean, it's going to be loud there. I'm sure it's going to be one of the biggest games in the country, if not the biggest. And forget about Florida State last year, because they're going to be better.
Well, in that same article that was talking about Keelon Russell on ESPN, they also had 10 wild predictions. And one of their wild predictions was Florida State wins 10 games.
Wow.
So after going 2-10 last year, granted, we all saw what they were the year before, I would expect it to regress back to the mean quite a bit. Now, do I think they're winning 10 games? No, I don't. But I could see them being like a 7-5 type of football team. Maybe like they end up being better than we think, and like 8-4. A lot of people say, well, 7-5 is not great. Well, Alabama dealt with some struggles against some 6-6, 7-5 caliber of football teams, especially when they had to go on the road. So if they don't bring it, they don't have a game plan, or they don't take this game seriously, Florida State can cause them a lot of problems. And that's kind of what I want to point out to fans. One of the things that I talked about on Twitter over the weekend was Alabama has played in 3 of the last 4 seasons. They have played in an environment that most people would consider a very hot, humid environment. They played Florida a few years ago. They played USF a couple of years ago, and then they played Texas on the road as well. They won all 3 of those games, but all 3 scores were close. A couple of point victory against both Florida and Texas, and then you only had a 10-point win against USF that everybody was nervous about. A lot of circumstances involved in that, but it's going to be hot. It's going to be humid. That you can't take Florida State. You can't take this opponent for granted. They are going to be a good football team. I'm excited to see what it looks like, but it's definitely going to be something that they need to keep an eye on this game for sure.
You guys, if you can't catch the show here, or you like the audio version, we got it on every single platform. And we throw that out immediately after this is over. So check it out. Our podcast form of Cover Crimson, and also covercrimson.com. Right now, you can take advantage of $25 off the annual subscription. So, for $75, you can have the entire year. Clint's on there. I know you guys can't wait to ask him questions and stuff. He lives on there. That's like his home. This is just this is like lunchtime for him.
Yeah, we're having fun. Someone actually asked about I'm willing to answer any questions on there. Like I understand some people might be embarrassed to ask certain questions, but it's all about learning. I mean, it's at one point everything people ask as far as like learning about the game and what certain things mean. Like I've been there before too. Everybody's got to start somewhere, but someone asked about the differences between like the X and the Z receivers compared to the slot, and then also like the differences between the Y and the H. And I mean, I really try to dive in and really go, as in-depth as I possibly could to explain each position, kind of how they're different, the expectations. And so that way, hopefully anybody that goes over there, they can check that out. And if you don't have a great idea of the differences and stuff, and you want to learn or know, that's something that I answered over the weekend. But I get questions like that all the time over there, and I love answering them.
Awesome, guys. And again, we appreciate Pearl River Resort for sponsoring the show. Hour and a half from Tuscaloosa, 2 and change from Birmingham. And I know we get a bunch of people in that vicinity that Philadelphia, Mississippi is not far away. And I've talked about the golf course already, Dancing Rabbit. It's great. But the casino is awesome too. It's 2 of them, Silver Star, Golden Moon. There's a bridge that gets you between both. They have amazing slots. And they have a sports book just like out in Vegas. So you can go in there and bet on the horses like I did on Saturday. I had the horse Gosher, 19-1 odds. Wait, did you see it, Clint?
I saw
way up. And then I had the other horse that won.
Oh, you did?
I had both. But
Okay.
but if if Gosher wins, I win 19-1. Instead, the 6-5 odds horse wins. I got $40 back. It was like it was going to be like
odds
a pretty good payoff.
If you'd have called that, we would have been celebrating with you today, because that would have been a heavy call.
It was one of the most amazing Preaknesses ever, just because journalism came out of nowhere. I mean, it was like and was not going to lose that race. And it was at my expense, but you can go over there and do the same thing over at Pearl River Resort. So take advantage of that, guys. We appreciate them so much, and we'll do it again tomorrow. But Roll Tide again. Sorry for if for those of you that are here live, being a few minutes punctual, but thank you for sticking around and hanging with us. Roll Tide, everybody.
To Pearl River Resort.